Hello everybody, I'm Dr. Brad Musil, and welcome to this introduction to my readings of The Utility of Religion, Mill, Nietzsche, and James. In this video, I'm going to discuss my reasons for offering these readings of my book, as well as kind of my strategy for the process of doing the readings, how I'm going to proceed in terms of going about reading this book. So, how should I start? This really was, the process of writing this book, i.e. my dissertation, how I earned my PhD in philosophy at the University of Kansas. This was arguably the most difficult process, the most difficult thing I've ever endured. I will be making separate videos at some point. At least that's my thought process. I anticipate doing so. In terms of sort of what to anticipate if you are interested in a future in philosophy and academia, and sort of what to expect in this sort of process of writing a dissertation. And so I'll speak to that more in a separate sort of video or separate sort of series. But in this introduction, or in this video, I wanted to again briefly speak to sort of why it is I'm actually reading my book or my dissertation, and the thought process I had in terms of how I should go about doing that. And so actually, before I turn to either one of those, I guess I should start by saying that, as I already intimated, this was arguably the most difficult thing I've ever endured in my life. It took 5+ years of my existence, you might say, where I was, continually wrestling with the issues that will be discussed throughout the book. It's something that again that I wrestled with intensively for quite some time, and in the process, right, that's a incredibly difficult process, and in the process I garnered a newfound appreciation for anyone. I almost want to say unqualifiedly anyone that has a upper level degree. Now I do recognize that there's a lot of universities out there with a lot of different methods in terms of conferring their degrees, but by and large, right, there's not many PhDs out there, and I think that's the moral of the story. And I think that I grew to appreciate that. It was a very humbling experience, I guess, is the gist of this story. And I kind of had to bury it when it happened. Or when I finally completed it, that is, I had to just distance myself from it. And so I defended my dissertation. I defended The Utility of Religion, the book, in front of the faculty members, that I had to do so for in 2014. And the whole point is, from that point forward, up until this point, at the very end of 2020, I really more or less set everything aside, set this whole issue aside, this whole book that I wrote aside. After getting that, approved, you're a doctor. I literally, I have revisited my dissertation, looked up things within it. I've sent various people passages within it. But ever since I defended the dissertation, I really haven't, from that point, I would say in the spring of 2014, I haven't really dove in and actually read the book, so to speak. And you think about it, right? You devote that much of your life, that much of your energy to doing something, and for 5 years, you're ready to just take a break from it. And so that's really what happened to me. I earned my doctorate. I passed, right? I defended the book, so to speak, if you will, the dissertation. I earned my PhD, and nothing really changed for me more or less. I don't want to get too much into my perspective and who I am and my biography too much because I want to really actually one of the things I want to emphasize is that I want the book to really stand on its own. Um, but the point is that I kind of sort of set everything aside and I just continued more or less the same way. Set everything aside in terms of this. Set it aside and more or less continued uh, as my life would otherwise have been going or proceeding at. So in other words, I taught the same classes. Really, other than writing this and spending all this time doing this. Um, After I defended this, nothing much changed. I still taught kind of the same classes, and so on. But I had to let it sort of. The whole point is I had to kind of let it sort. I had I couldn't work with this anymore. I had to let it go for a while. I wrestled with it so intimately that to do so any further after those 5 years of intense struggle with this material, to do so anymore honestly probably would have quite literally driven me crazy. I mean, I honestly think that that's how intensively I've worked with this material, and I think if you stick with me throughout the reading of this work, that you can see why that would be the case. What is there? 716 footnotes. You know, you might think whatever it is, you think of it ultimately, but I did. There's no denying that I poured my heart and soul into this, so to speak. And anyway, the whole upshot here is the point is I sort of tossed it all aside, and what has it been 5 6 years? So what are we now in 2020? And I've kind of started having the interest rekindled and kind of had this desire, not necessarily even in the utility religion, but just this desire in general to pursue more in-depth questions in philosophy rather than just the intro level stuff that I've been doing for the last 10 plus years. And so um, that's been the impetus in one sense for me revisiting this, but in general I've had this general sense of, well, hey, maybe it's time. It's time to go back and dig back into this labor of love that I spent 5 plus years um, working on. And again, I'm not going to talk too much about what it's like working on a dissertation. I'll probably offer tips on that and sort of the whole process of that in a different series and different videos. I'm going to try to just stick to this. But let me just say that it was a very arduous process, that this did take a lot of time, a lot of turmoil, a lot of effort, a lot of revisions, a lot of pain, a lot of, I mean, I don't know how else to convey it. It really was literally the most difficult thing, other than like losing, people that are close to me, the most difficult thing that I've gone through. And on the flip side, though, I would say that I've grown a lot from it, and that, you know, I've come out as a result. I'm a doctor, and I do feel like I've grown a lot from it. And again, I'll speak more to that in different videos and so on. I want to let the book itself speak a lot, or in its own right, for its own merits, for itself. And I guess real quick to that point, like, I think a lot of times if we already know an author going into reading the book, or we know a professor going into their class, we're more inclined to come pre-equipped with sort of assumptions of what that person is going to think regarding the issue, or even our own opinions might be biased in certain ways given all that. So in view of that, again, I just want to try to offer this in an objective fashion as possible. And so I'm going to, for the most part, refrain from giving my background, why it is I came to this, why it is I'm wrestling with this issue in general, I'll let the book, again, there in the introduction, I sort of speak to it. I'll let the book speak for itself, and I want it um, to speak to the readers or to the listeners, in as an objective fashion as possible. And so, again, I'm going to try to, in what follows, um, refrain from offering up too much in terms of background or why it is I am so enamored with this topic to begin with. But I did, again, I want to talk about, reiterate that I spent a lot of years of my life laboring on this, and finally I'm ready to dive back into it. And actually, so coinciding with that, I am, after all these years of teaching sort of introductory classes, I'm ready to, my kids are a little bit older, I'm ready to um, sort of offer, higher level or upper level courses in philosophy as well. And so I'm ready to revisit this in that sense. I want to offer a course in this, someday, and in fact, someday very soon. And so, in view of that, it behooves me then to revisit this and to reread, my own book, right? So I'm going to do that regardless. And so I thought ultimately what I'm doing here is I'm going to revisit this. You're going to witness firsthand me rereading this for the first time, and literally, not to say that I haven't like gone back and copied and pasted certain parts and discussions I've had with certain people, but I haven't gone back, I haven't actually read through this in its entirety for sure in 5+ years. So you're going to see me, again, in view of me anticipating teaching this, and basically being ready to dig back into this. You're going to see me going back into it for the first time, right? This is literally me reading through this for the first time. So I thought I'd record myself doing so. Now, obviously there's going to be some issues with that. I'm going to screw up, and I'll speak more to that here in a moment. This, I thought this would offer, again, I do plan on offering a course that's related to the same sort of material that would be centered around what I talk about in my book. And so that's, one of the reasons why I'm offering, these readings then. And just in general, my dissertation or my book's been, it's been available. It's for free. You can access it through the University of Kansas, and I provide a link in all my videos, to that resource. But it's sitting there, you can access it, but maybe this is another um, form through which you can access it that you might prefer, right? So one way or another, I hope that this offers a benefit, me, going through this and offering, my rereading through going through this and rereading for the first time really in 5 years, going all the way through this, offering it to you. I hope, also offers you some sort of benefit. Again, I'm not going to say too much in the way of my history with respect to religion. I don't want to bias you, the reader, or I should say the listener, in one way or another. I want the book to speak for itself, and so there is an introduction in the book, and so that'll do some work with respect to kind of giving you some background with respect to who I am. But otherwise, again, I want you to approach this book, ideally, from my perspective, you'll approach this book as objectively as possible. Never mind what it is I might have thought coming into this project, or what I think coming out of the project. What do you make of it as it is? Okay, so okay, having said all that, before I actually get into kind of my strategy for going through the readings themselves, I thought it would be interesting to kind of reminisce with you guys. And so I mentioned that this is the first time I'm going to go through these readings in 5+ years, where I've through the book in 5+ years, not these readings, but again, I've read passages of my book or my dissertation, obviously, over the years, but I honestly don't recall ever having read through it in its entirety since I defended it, back in 2014. And again, it's something I just, when you work so intensively with something, right, you just gotta, after a while, you just gotta set it aside. And so too, then I had this box of everything. Well, first of all, here's William James and the Varieties of Religious Experience. I worked so much with it that it's in pieces now. I mean, literally in pieces. And I do have did I set that somewhere? No. I do have another version of this book that's in much better shape, but this is literally the one I worked with um, in the dissertation for the most part. But then this is the copy of the Antichrist I worked with then for Nietzsche, John Stuart Mill, the utility of religion, the subject of chapter 1 of the dissertation. Anyway, I thought I would sort of go back and revisit, some of the stuff that I worked with in the dissertation. So these are the actual resources, and then this here, I don't remember opening this book or this box in years. So again, this could have been since literally 2014, since I defended. This might have been unopened, and so I'm literally opening this for the first time. I thought it would be interesting to do so here. I mean, I have binders. I don't even know what this stuff is. I mean, again, new, respect for people with doctorates out there, right? There's a reason why this stuff takes years. Now, I don't know that everyone is this ridiculous about this stuff, and if I recall, I do remember some members of the committee being like, sort of suggesting that I seemed kind of overly meticulous, you might say, but I didn't know what to expect. I'd never defended a dissertation before. How was I to know how prepared or not prepared I should be, right? Anyway, just going to. I just dug this out of that box too. Let's see what's this. Comprehensive outline. That'll shine through actually in the videos. Wow, a lot going on there. So hopefully you enjoyed that trip down memory lane, if you will. Real quick, I wanted to speak to kind of some thoughts I had in mind in terms of how to do this, right? So I had this idea of reading the dissertation, offering the dissertation, but how to best go about doing it, especially given there's how many 716, I believe. Yeah, 716 footnotes. How do you go about reading an academic dissertation with 716 footnotes in a way that doesn't seem overly disjointed? So I had to wrestle with those sorts of things, and so I wanted to take a moment to kind of speak to those issues. So ultimately, I really wanted to make the readings as clear and seamless as possible, right? So, if you want to just hear the dissertation or the book, I wanted to make it as easy as possible to just do so, right? Now, granted that I am presenting these in chunks, right? It's, lots of short videos. You're not going to be able to just hear the dissertation of the book in one long reading. You are going to have to go from one video to the next, but I did try to make it, and I've differentiated in each video, right, so that you should be able to click and immediately go from right where you left off in the previous video right to the next one, right? You can even skip the introduction stuff and get right to the next part of the book. So again, I'm trying to make it as seamless as possible. But again, I'm new to this. I'm not an expert in this. Okay, there will also be lots of screw ups. I'll stutter speaking to the point I was just mentioning, right? I'm not an expert. I don't have very good equipment. It is what it is. Um, for example, I've actually at this point already recorded some of my readings up to almost through part 2 of chapter 1. And there's been parts where it's been laughable, but I'm not about to, so I screw up, right? And I don't quite read it, exactly as it is. But again, I'm going through this for the first time in 5 years, where I'm literally going through and reading the whole thing. And so the whole point is, I'm not about to redo a whole video when I screw up. What is this? Philanthropy. You say that. You say that with me. Philanthropies, right? Demophiles, barbarous. You get the idea. I screw up all of those in the videos I've already recorded. That's why I have those noted there. Um, so it's not going to be perfect, okay? But it is what it is. And I figured it's better to offer it than to not offer it. And, I don't think I do too bad of a job, at least so far. I do screw up, but, anybody would screw up. And I do have a newfound appreciation, I should say. So, I'm a runner. I allude to that in some of my videos. I like to go for runs, and I like to listen a lot of times to audiobooks when I'm jogging, and so a lot of times I'll critique the narrator and the audiobooks. But now, having gone through some of these videos, I can appreciate how difficult it is to do their job, if you will. So that's one thing that comes from that. And I will say again, I'm not perfect. That's not my main gig, right? I'm a philosopher, if you will, not a professional speaker. And so you're going to see some screw ups. But, I thought it's the pursuit of the truth. I'd rather offer it, even if I screw up in the process. Okay. I did have to do so. One major issue, I've been alluding to this, right, is that there's a lot of this is a close textual analysis sort of dissertation, as you're going to see. I'm working very closely with the text. And so you're going to see a lot of citations. And so one of the things I had to mention or sort of wrestle with is how to go about dealing with those. If I literally read verbatim all the footnotes as I was reading through the dissertation or the book, it would come across as incredibly disjointed, and you would be very hard to follow what's going on. And so, after reflecting on that, what I decided to do was to basically only sort of offer the footnotes on the ones that were further reflections. So, in other words, so basically, if a footnote didn't do anything other than cite the source, all I would do is say like footnote 33 cites the source. But if it did something other than cite the source, then I will read, what the footnote actually says. But if it just cites the source, I'll just say literally footnote 33 cites the source. And I do that because, again, to do otherwise seems like it would make it more disjointed. So I want it to come across as seamlessly as clear as possible. And so in view of that, my thinking was only read off the footnotes that don't just cite the source. And so alternatively, I do plan on offering then a video where I do go through each of the footnotes meticulously in detail, going through them and saying exactly what each footnote says. So from John Stuart Mill, this particular work, what page, literally with each particular footnote. So I do plan on offering that video, but for the sake of clarity, I didn't want to bog the general videos in the presentation down by constantly saying all these various sources and so on. So hopefully you can understand that and appreciate that move on my part, if you will. So again, I do plan on providing a different video where I will go through all 716 of those footnotes in detail. And I do want to again reiterate that I spent a lot of years of my life at the University of Kansas, working through these issues, these related issues. And so, again, this was published through the University of Kansas in 2014, and I do provide a link to where you can actually access then, a visual copy of the dissertation or the book through the University of Kansas in every one of the videos, including this one. So I guess that's it. I really have said all I've wanted to say in terms of this introduction. I've kind of given you a glimpse of what it is I'm up to here. Why it is I'm revisiting this book, this exhaustive work that took so many years of my life and so much of my attention, and why it was. Hopefully, you can understand why it was that I was um, wanting to set it aside for so many years. But now, here we are 5 or 6 years later. I'm ready to again revisit it, and I hope you will enjoy, accompanying me in revisiting this work, which again it was very difficult. Again, arguably the most difficult process I've ever endured in my life, but I think arguably one of the most rewarding processes, if you will, that I've endured in my life. And I'm very proud of what I've ultimately accomplished with this. And so, again, thank you for tuning in here, and I hope you enjoy my readings of The Utility of Religion, then Mill, Nietzsche, and James. Thank you.